Okay, guys, so this is the solution set to the practice problems that you should be completing on capital and current account items, or capital and current account kind of sorting in a sense. If you have not already taken the time to do this practice set by yourself and attempt it, you should pause the video right now. So pause right now if you haven't done this. You can either just do it by looking at this screen or go back and find the document in our shared files, but don't watch the solutions here until you've at least given it a first attempt so that you can kind of see this process. Right? The more important of the two things we need to do on this is we need to sort whether these items belong in the current account or the capital account. We need to be able to tell whether a transaction is a current account transaction or a capital account transaction. But we also need to be able to tell whether a given transaction is going to move an account into credit or debit. So here are the two questions you need to ask yourself. When we're looking first at the question of credit or debit, the question is always the same, and that question is, where is the money going? These accounts track the money, right? They track where dollars move. So when I buy a good from another country, the good comes to me and the money leaves the United States. And so the first thing to think is that if the money is leaving, that is a debit for my country. If the money is coming into my country, then that is the credit for my country. So you're always tracking where the money goes. And then when it comes to sorting whether you're doing a current or a capital account transaction, we are asking whether this is ultimately a net export, which is pretty much the current account, right? A good or a service, or whether it is an asset. And that asset can be a physical asset or a financial asset. It doesn't matter. But if we're looking at physical and financial assets that are moving, then we're going on to the capital account. But if we're looking at goods and services and net exports, or generally net exports, then we're looking at the current account. The example here, if we want to start, is actually, I think, a pretty poor example. It's a little bit tricky. The first half is easy. Harley Davidson purchases something from Japan. So we can start here with the money is going to Japan. And that's why they have it marked as a debit, because the money is leaving the United States and going to Japan. And then they say that they're buying production machinery. And production machinery, it kind of depends, current or capital, on whether the machinery is moving or not. But I think they're assuming here that what they really want to say is almost like they're buying a factory that's in Japan. And if they're buying a factory in Japan, then that would go on the capital account, as they are buying a physical asset that's going to stay in Japan. The rest are a bit more direct, including some really awful puns, as you'll see along here, but there are two tricky ones along the way. So let's just see how we can do on these. So number 2, entrepreneur, your first awful pun, who's an entrepreneur, invests $50 million to develop a theme park in Malaysia. So an American is sending his money to Malaysia. So that helps us first see the money is going to Malaysia. That must be a debit for the United States. And he is investing his money in a physical asset. So we're going to put that on the capital account, right? This is a physical asset in the form of a theme park or a business. Really, you could, if you wanted, you could call it a financial asset if he's kind of buying a part of an already existing company that's there. Number 3. A Chinese company sells $1 million worth of berets. Berets are hats, by the way. Sometimes students don't know that, to the U.S. Army. This one's tricky because it's using the word sell instead of the word buy, but we can definitely add here that the money is going to China, and the U.S. Army is sending money to a Chinese company. But hats are a good or a service. So first off, if the money's going to China, then we're going to say that this is a debit. But this debit exists on the current account because the berets are a good. That transaction is over as soon as the American company or the American Army pays the Chinese company for the goods. Number 4, BMW. If you don't know, BMW is a German company. pays $1 million to a U.S. shipper to ship cars from Germany to the United States. So for the first time here, we have money that is coming from Germany and to the U.S. So that's going to be a credit to the United States. The money is coming to the United States. And on the other side, we have shipping, and shipping is a service which goes as a net export, right? Which puts it on the current account. 5 and 6 get to be our trickier ones, so slow down and make sure you pay attention to 5 and 6 as we get here, because they're going to be a little bit more difficult. Number 5, each month immigrant who recently arrived in the United States sends half her paycheck to her sister in Poland. So first of all, the money is going to Poland. It's leaving the United States and going to Poland, so that's going to be a debit. But what gets students here on this one most of the time, this goes on the current account because this is a transfer. This is what we sometimes call a remission, when people simply send money across borders. Notice there's no asset here, right? I'm going to send money to somebody I know in another country, but I'm not expecting anything back, and that's why it belongs on the current account, because the transaction is otherwise over at the end of that moment. Number 6 is the really, really tricky one. Bank of America pays $5 million in interest to French depositors. Now, first of all, the first half of this is pretty easy. Money is going from an American bank to French depositors, so we'll put that as a debit. But this also belongs on the current account because this is a form of income. This is not creating an asset, right? Not creating an asset. This doesn't say that people are depositing their money in Bank of America. This says that people are receiving interest from an existing asset, that asset being their bank account. So this is the same as if I were to buy a stock. Buying a stock itself is the kind of the creation or the swapping of the asset. That would go on the capital account. But if the stock pays me a dividend, then that is the company that has the stock paying me my deserved income or my profits. That goes on the current account. So pay attention to this one. This slows students down most of the time. The rest of these are pretty straightforward. Senor Ramos from Spain buys a shopping center in Florida. So we've got money coming to the United States. That's going to be a credit. Money to the United States is a credit, and a shopping center is a physical asset. So that goes on a capital account, right? Shopping center is a physical asset. Belongs on the capital account. A Brazilian investor buys 5 $10,000 U.S. Treasury bonds. So he is sending money to the U.S. government. That is a credit for the United States. He is buying bonds. That is an asset, right? So bonds are an asset. He is financing American debt. Number 9, slightly tricky, not tricky, but just worth talking about. German tourists spend $3 million in the United States. We've got some money coming to the United States, but U.S. tourists spend $5 million in Germany, so we've also got money going to Germany. So first, you could say this is both a credit and a debit, but it is worth noting that it would technically be a net debit because we have $2 million more leaving the United States than coming in. So that net debit will belong on the current account. Tourism, think hotels, think restaurants, think airfare. None of those are assets. Those are all net exports. This is a relationship that's really worth keeping in your head, right? Tourism is a net export. British, a London record store, spends $10,000 on CDs by the Generic Girls, a U.S. kiddie pop group. So we've got money coming to the United States, right? The British company is sending money to the United States. That's a credit for the United States. And this is on the current account. The CDs, not the asset CDs, but the music itself is a good. So that is a net export. And the last one, and our best pun of all, Sam Boney, who likes ice rinks, buys stock in a Chilean ice rink chain. So we've got money here going to Chile. So that's going to be a debit on the US account. And he is buying stock, which of course is an asset, which belongs on the capital account. Stock is an asset. So one more time, you need to be able to sort first and kind of most easily track where the money is going. Money coming in, money to the US is a credit for the United States. Money to another country is going to be our debit for the United States. And then the side that is a little bit trickier, but equally important, you need to be able to sort between whether we're talking about goods and services net exports, which go on the current account, or assets, both physical and financial, which belong on the capital account. So if you've got that, go review a little bit more, and then this first round of this lesson ends with a very quick quiz that's available on our PowerSchool page.